It's another Surprise Live with Griff. And I am out here right next to Avenue of the Giants. So you might hear some cars and you'll definitely hear some motorcycles go by because we're right next to the road. But right next to the road in Humboldt-Redwood State Park, right next to Avenue of the Giants in Humboldt-Redwood State Park, is a very cool thing that only exists in old growth forest. And this thing that we're about to look at, I feel like I gotta like go down like this, but this thing that we're about to look at only exists in old growth forests and provides really good habitat to several different species of wildlife, and some that are near and dear to your heart, like bats. You're like, bats aren't near and dear to my heart. Bats are near and dear to my heart, though. So just pretend like they're near and dear to yours too, because bats are cool. Up here, bats eat insects, and they don't get caught in your hair. Okay, so it's a misconception. I'm just going to go over some misconceptions of bats. Blind as a bat, not true. They can see good. Get tangled in your hair? Yeah, we've all been told that, but it's not true. We've been told lots of things that aren't true, so don't be too shocked, right? Okay, and bats don't all have rabies. Okay, and they aren't flying rodents. In fact, they're more closely related to primates, monkeys, than they are to rats and mice. So bats are cool, and they use this what I'm about to show you as habitat, and so do bears. So do voxus swifts, and so do other animals. Now, it looks kind of scary, but I don't want you to be scared because I'm right here with you, so you're fine, okay? And I hope you guys can hear and see me, so I'm just going to type something in the comments here, just like I'm going to type S, and that way sometimes when I type something in, I can see you guys. So if you can hear and see me good, let me know. But check this out. This is super cool. Here we go. This is, hey Tanya, this is a goosepen tree. Oh yeah, this is a goosepen tree, and it is very, very tall. And that burn goes up a long way, but inside of this, it's hollow even further up. And we'll take a couple looks at it. I'm just trying to fix the phone here real quick. Okay, there we go. So this is called a goosepen tree, and this only happens in the old growth redwood forest because you got to be a really big tree to have this happen to you, and we'll talk about what happened. But if you look up there, you can see that there are green leaves, okay? So there's green leaves up there. So this tree, even though it's hollow, is still alive. It's alive, like Frankenstein. Hey, Katie. Hey, Jeanette. So this tree is probably, Jeanette asked, how tall is it? You know, this tree is probably, let's see, probably close to 300 feet tall, okay? So this is a goosepen. We're going to get closer to it. But how does this form? Well, it's a complicated story, but you can tell by looking at it, it looks kind of charred. So fire is one of the contributing factors, okay? Fire is definitely one of the contributing factors of how this forms. So we've been talking a lot in California. We've been talking about fires a lot because a great big huge portion of our state is on fire. And I did a couple Facebook Lives, one briefly explaining fires, and how it's not so simple of a thing to just be like, well, you should have done this. We should have done a lot of things. You know, you learn by making mistakes, and we made some big mistakes. Logging's not going to solve all our problems. Stopping lightning's not going to stop all our problems. Locking up all the arsonists aren't going to stop our problems. It's complicated. And I'm going to put that link to that talk in this as soon as I get back to my office. And I also did one on how to help wildlife during fires, and I'll put that link in the post here too. But right now, we're going to talk about how fires create some really good habitat, at least in this one example. So this is a chimney tree, and this has been hollowed out by fire, but that's a simplified explanation. You guys know I don't like simplified explanations. But since we don't have a lot of time, I'm going to keep this short and simple as much as possible. But I'm going to go in here because I feel cool when I go in here, literally and figuratively. So this is pretty deep. It's pretty big. In fact, you can probably fit 30 people in here. Okay. So you could probably fit 30 people in there. That's a pretty huge hole in the tree. Now, that didn't all happen in one event, okay? This happened in several events. So what happens is, when you have a huge, giant redwood tree, which we do have here in Humboldt Redwood State Park, but globally, only 4.6% of the old growth redwoods are still standing. The rest have been cut down, and much of that is regrowing. And if it's regrowing in the park or if it's regrowing in some other park, we're trying to accelerate old growth characteristics like this. This is just one of many old growth characteristics, okay? So that's the only one I'm going to talk about during this Facebook Live, but tune in because I'll get around to the rest of them. Like I said, I'm right next to Avenue of the Giants, so it's kind of loud at times, but this is how quickly you can get out of your car and see something like this. But I hope that when you come here, you take a hike. So anyways, let me get back to chimney trees, or AKA goosepen trees. They're called goosepen trees because during the Depression, some people who lived here during the Depression would keep their livestock in there, and they build a little gate in front of it. It'd be goosepen tree. The people who lived here for thousands of years, the Sinkyone, we know very little bit about them before they were displaced and murdered, and horrible, terrible, awful California Native American history things happened to them, and they're not here in the park anymore. There's some descendants that live in the area, and I've been told that they sometimes lived in these or played in these or stored stuff in these, but I don't know for sure. I would, if I lived here for thousands of years, I probably would have eventually got around to doing something very cool with this big shelter. Also, a lot of animals use this. So when there is many of these are actually really common. And stay on the trail because you'll see them on the trail, but there's a lot off the trail that I don't want you to go to because you'll disturb who's living there. And we don't want you to disturb who's living there because bears use these and they put their cubs in these. This is a very comfortable place for a bear. This is like moving on up if you're a bear, okay? And sometimes bears will live in there with bats. And bats will live in these things and they're hollow inside. And I can't take the phone inside there or it will kill the my reception that I have, connectivity. But up inside that tree, it's hollow and bats are in there holding on during the day because they're nocturnal. So they come out at night or in the evening and they eat a bunch of bugs. And just so you know, bats, different species of bats come out different times and hunt different places. So all bats don't do the same thing. And we have like 13 species, I think, in this park. So the myotises, the most common bats that you see, come out a little bit earlier before it gets dark, and they hunt insects. But they could be staying in something like this, okay? And so they could fly over the bears, and be like, "Hey, what's up, bears?" And they could be like roommates. The bears and the bats could be roommates in these chimney trees and these goosepen trees. Isn't that awesome? And so the bats come out, and then sometimes during the day, Voxus swifts, they're little tiny birds, and they kind of go like this. They'll fly in and spend the night in here. Spend the night in here where the bats are out, and the bats will come during the day, and the Voxus swifts will leave, and the bears will be like, "Oh, people come and going all the time. I feel like this is a drug selling goose pen or something. Too much traffic." But it's just because this is really valuable habitat. And like I said, there's only 4.6% of the old growth left. And so these don't exist when they cut down trees, and these goose pens are left standing sometimes because maybe they don't have the value. They don't have anything blocking the wind. They blow down really easily. So goosepen, they don't have as much, strength, integrity, because they're hollow. So 4.6% is like, imagine someone gave you $100, like they gave you $100 in ones, and they just made it rain, and you're like, wow. And they're like, 1, 2, 3, and you're like, hey. And you got $100, like, what am I going to buy with this? I'm going to buy some good food. I'm going to do something there, whatever. And then they said, oh, wait, never mind. And they took back 96. You would feel ripped off. You have 4 little measly dollars. That's how much old growth is left. Oh, $4.60. They give you some quarters and some nickels. And you're like, dang, that's how few old growth redwoods are left. And so there's not very much of this like chimney tree habitat. So let me back up and let you guys look at this because I have a feeling that you might not be able to see this well. Those of you who came on late, this is a hollow tree, okay? That happens in old growth redwood forest because it needs to be a big tree to do this in a big way. But so many animals use these. We call these cavities. Lots of birds are cavity nesters, okay? If it uses a birdhouse, it's a cavity nester, okay? Any bird that uses a birdhouse is a cavity nester. And normally they'd be using old trees with holes in them. But because whenever we see dead trees, we're like, dead trees, we're gonna cut it down. And we cut it down and we're just destroying all that habitat. So if it's a safety reason why you need to cut it down, then cut it down, of course. Okay, you don't want a dead tree falling on your house or on your sidewalk or on the school bus or anything like that. But if you don't need to cut it down, don't. Okay, because it's really good habitat for wildlife. And this one is especially because this is huge. massive old growth forest. Old growth tree. And so I'll get in here one more time. So fires create these, and how these are created is that something wounded this. So maybe another big tree fell on this redwood and scraped off its foot-thick bark, okay? And what protects redwoods from fire is that thick, foot-thick bark that has very little sap in it, very little resin in it, so it doesn't burn well. That's why redwood trees are fire resilient, okay? And then so after a little bit burns, so this whole thing isn't created in one fire. Did you see how big this is? This wasn't created in one fire, okay? You can run around in here. Oh my God, you can do your exercise in here. So this wasn't created in one fire. This was created in several. Oh, he fell. So when it burns, it exposes the wood, the burnt wood, and this fungus comes in there. And redwoods usually have a lot of tannic acid, so it keeps funguses out. So the funguses see that burn mark and they're like, "No, attack!" And like 2 of them come in. One of them is called Cerea sequoia, named after Sequoia sempervirens. And it comes in, it starts eating behind the burnt part, and it makes the wood punky and dry. And so then the next fire that comes around has some dry wood, and it gets in there, eats it. And then the fire goes out, and the fungus come in, and they take turns until you have a huge goosepen tree, okay? But this tree is still alive because there's this little layer where all the good stuff happens, like all the veins and arteries and everything important. You know what I mean? They don't really have veins and arteries, but you know what I'm saying. All the important stuff, the phloem and the xylem, is in the cambium layer, which is right behind this thick bark, okay? So it's kind of protected, and that's how this tree stayed alive. Isn't that cool? So this hollow tree, very hollow tree, it's almost as big as a lot of your houses, I bet. Like if you got a studio apartment, this is like a studio apartment. This tree will hopefully be here for a long time, getting looked at by people and appreciated as being this old growth example of great habitat in an old growth forest. And I can't get too much farther away, I'm sorry, because I'll lose reception. I'm on this little portable Wi-Fi. But kind of looks like somebody scary might live in there, huh? So anyways, old growth forests and fire resilient forests are very, very important. And fire is not all bad. Right now it feels all bad because a lot of us are getting evacuated and losing our homes. So we're like, fire's bad, period. Well, a lot of us feel like that right now. It's totally understandable. But fires are a natural part of California. We have pyrophilic plant. Pyromaniac, crazy fire. Pyrophilic, likes fire, plants that like fire. We have a lot of plants that need fire in the ecosystem. We have a lot of animals that adapted for fire-created habitats like goosepen trees. So if you are worried about fires right now, you can go to, what is it? Let me see, fires.ca.gov. Yes, fire.ca.gov to find out about fires. I'm very close to the biggest California fire ever, the August Complex, which is like 58% contained. So hopefully that gets totally contained. But it's doing a lot of interesting stuff right now. It's creating habitats as much as it's destroying. I know that's a hard thing to wrap your mind around. So I'm going to share some links in this post when I get back to my office in about an hour. And I'm going to check out some of your comments. Oh, there's a lot. Hey, Sandra. Hey, Jeanette. Yes, there is a lot going on here. So I'm going to have to look at your comments when I get back to my office. But in the meantime, come visit Humboldt Redwood State Park. Appreciate these cavities, the holes in trees, because lots of animals, including the Humboldt flying squirrel and Selvarovar owls and stuff like that, use these holes to live in, and bears. Okay, we'll use that one. All right, so I will see you guys later, and I'll put the important links in there, and enjoy the outdoors while you can before it gets too wet and cold.